We begin today the Gemara on the bottom of Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis, the last line. The Gemara here is in the middle of a story that it brought regarding Elisha. Elisha was in the city of Yerichai, and there in Yerichai, the Gemara is soon going to bring the psukim about this. The water there was not drinkable. So he came to the city and he gave them a bracha, and the water became sweet again. But what happened was there were people there in the city that made a living out of providing water for the people of the city. They brought water, so for them they lost their whole parnasa, because now the people had the water there in the city. So when Elisha left the city, there were these young lads that ran after him and were antagonizing him and screaming at him, "You took away our parnasa." So because of this, Elisha was makpid, he was upset about this, and he looked at them, and this curse, when he looked at them, caused that a miracle happened, and two bears came and attacked these children that were antagonizing him. That's the story. So the Gemara here brings the pasuk that describes what happened. The bottom of Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis. Okay, right at the end. Zok the Gemara vatetzene shtei doivim min hayar. Two bears came out of the forest. Vatifkana mehem arboim ushnei yoladim. And they split open, they killed 42 children. So what exactly happened here? So there's an argument about this, as the Gemara Rav Shmuel argued, Chadomar Nes. One opinion is that one miracle happened here. And V'chadoma, another opinion is Nes betoich Nes. There was one miracle within another. What does this mean? Mandom and Nes, the one that says there was one miracle here, Yar Hava. There was a forest in that area. Doivim lo Havu, but there was no bears there. So the miracle was that bears came out of this forest. Mandom and Nes betoich Nes, the opinion that says there was a miracle within a miracle, Lo Yar Hava v'lo Doivim Hava. There was no forest and there was no bears. And the miracle was that Hashem created both. There was a forest now and bears. This is the source of the saying. People says, this expression that comes from this Gemara here, that this is the tremendous miracle that happened there. Frek the Gemara on this opinion here, if the miracle here, the point was to punish until these children got killed, so it would be enough if the bears would come and with no forest. Why was a double miracle here? And it says the Gemara de Beisi. So they're afraid. Rashi says this refers to the bears. That if there would just be bears, but no forest, the nature of the bears is they're afraid of human beings. They go out of the forest and they see human beings, they're actually afraid. So, but in the forest though, their place, they're not afraid. So they created the bears and the forest, so they shouldn't be afraid to attack these children. That's the Pshat Rashi says. The Marsha says, Be'isi goes on the children, that if there would be just the bears without the forest, so then the children would see these bears coming from a distance and they would run away. So they wouldn't be attacked. But because there was a forest there, so they couldn't see the bears anymore. Omer Rab Chanina says, Bishvil arba mishnayim karbanis shehikriv Balak melech Moav. It was because the 42 karbanis that Balak brought when he brought Bilam to curse the Yidden, and then the pasuk there says that he brought karbanis, and he brought 42 karbanis. And so in that schar, or in the schus of that, what happened is he got a certain reward for what he did. Hufku Yisrael arba mishnayim yeladim. These 42 children got killed by these bears. So even though the story that it says in Navi is about Elisha, that it was because he got upset at these children, but really the source of how this was able to happen, it was because of the 42 karbanis that Balak brought. Frek the Gemara.
Jewish children?
Yes, of course, yeah. Frek the Gemara, Eini, is this true? Was this what happened as a result of the karbanis that Balak brought? We find elsewhere that it says something else happened as a result. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, the person should always occupy himself in learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs, even if it's not for the sake of the mitzvah. Because from doing it not for the proper reason, you will come to do it for the proper reason. And there's the famous pshat that the Rebbe would always say that the toich inside the shalei lishma, there is a proper, the toich is already there because the yid b'pnimius wants to do the mitzvah. And so where do we learn this from? Because Shebeschar Arboim Mishnayim Karbanis Shehikriv Balak, as a reward for these 42 karbanis that Balak brought, Melech Moav, the king of Moav, Zacha v'yatzam imenu Rus. He merited, and one of his descendants was Rus. Sheyatzam imenu Shleima, and Shleima was a descendant of Rus. Shekasav Bey, and regarding Shleima Melech, the pasuk describes when he brought the karbanis in the first place of Mikdash, Elef Eilis Yala Shleima. Shleima Melech brought 1,000 karbanis. Now, where do we see that Shlomo Melech was a descendant of Rus? So that we know that Shlomo was a descendant of Rus because he was David HaMelech's son. But where do we see that Rus was a descendant of Balak? Rus is a daughter of Eglain. Who was Eglain? Benoi Shel Balak, the son of Balak. Haisa, that's who he was. So what do we see over here? The reward for Balak bringing the 42 karbanis was what? That Shlomo Melech, his great-great-grandson, brought what? 1,000 karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash. Not these 42 children that got killed here. Answers the Gemara, both are true. When he brought his karbanis, what was his desire? His desire was for the negative, to bring a curse upon the Eden. Right? So when he wanted to bring that curse, he brought karbanis along with it. So the Eibush even gave him a schar for what his intention was, that the klala materialized later regarding these 42 children. Now the Gemara brings a story there when Elisha was in the city, when Yerichai, Vayemru Anshi Yeir El Elisha, the people in the city said to Elisha, Hine na Moshe V'Yir Teif, that city, living over here in this city is very good, Kashadeni Raya, as you can see, V'Gaimer, but then the pasuk there goes on to say that, but the water is bad, V'Mayim Rayim V'Aretz M'Shakelas. The water here is very bad and people over here can't live it, they die here. So the Gemara asks, if the water is not drinkable, it's bad water, and people die there, so why are they telling Elisha that it's good to live here? So Rab Chanan answers, from here we see that the grace of a place is upon the people living there. People live in a place, even if it's a terrible place to live in, but it finds grace. It is sort of a favor, a grace in people's eyes. In connection to this, the Gemara brings, Rabbi Yechanan said, Shloisha Chinois Hein. There are three different kinds of grace. Chei Makam al Yeshva, the grace of a place is upon the people living there. Chei Nisha al Baila, the grace of a wife is upon her husband. And Chei Mekach al Mekchai, or the grace here is al Loichai. Also, when you buy something, the person that buys it, so it finds favor in his eyes because he bought it. Actually, there's some say this Gemara refers to a place or a wife or an item that you're buying before you buy it, that you sort of convince yourself that this is good and therefore you go ahead and do it. And some say that it refers to after you're living there, or after you're married, after you buy it. That's when you already have it, so you sort of convince yourself that it's good. Three different illnesses. Elisha got ill. One was a result of the fact that he was the one that instigated this curse or this punishment on these children, that these bears came and attacked them. So he was punished for this and he got sick. Another time was he rejected, he pushed away Gechazi, which was one of his servants, and he pushed him away with two hands. Gemara will soon bring the story. And then the final illness was when he passed away. Shanama, we see in the pasuk Ve'elisha chala, so that says once he got sick. Then it says Es chalya, his sickness. That's another time. And then it says Asher Yomazbai, when he passed away. That's a third time. So here the Gemara brings the story. A person should always use his left hand. The left hand is the weaker hand, to push away, to reject. There's a time when a person has to discipline or push away, but that should only be with the left hand. And with the right hand, he should embrace and he should bring closer. So in other words, the stronger kayach should be to be mekarev, to bring closer. That's why it's with yamin. That everyone's discussed, Barichis, the lashon of this Gemara here, because on one hand, the Gemara seems to be saying the point that yes, it is necessary to use smoil and doicha and yamin mekareves, but the Gemara still says smoil doicha first. Why does it say smoil doicha first before the yamin mekareves? If yamin mekareves is more important, the yamin mekareves should come first. So the Rebbe says, Enechanami, the truth is, Yemim Kareves does come first. When a person wants to teach or educate, the very first thing is you have to create an opening. You have to open up the person's mind that you're talking to. Otherwise, there's no channel to communicate or teach anything to him. When the Gemara says Smoil Deiche, it's referring to after you already have that introduction to open up the student, then in the actual teaching itself, so the student has to sort of be mevatel himself, to close down his own personal ideas and to listen. That's sort of a small deichet, that he has to be mevatel himself, and then comes in mimikareves. Then you can teach him. You can look, this is in a sikha in Pesach, and Chelik Yitzayin, the Rebbe explains this barichas there. Weiter, so the Gemara says, where is the source for this idea? Loika Elisha shedachva legechazi b'shtei yadav, unlike what Elisha did, that he rejected Gechazi, his servant, with two hands. And also, like Yeshua ben Prachya, and not like Yeshua ben Prachya, shedachva le'echad metalmidav b'shtei yadav. He pushed away one of his students with two hands. So in our Gemara it says le'echad metalmidav, but this is after the censors took out who the student was. It used to say before that in the Gemara, Yeshu HaNeitzri. Okay, going on Yeshu HaNeitzri, but The Taisus Harash, I believe, says over here that this does not refer to Yeshua Noitzi that we know of, because he was at the end of the second base of Mikdash in a much later time. And here the Gemara is going to bring about Yeshua ben Prachia. Yeshua ben Prachia lived much earlier, towards the beginning of the second base of Mikdash. And therefore this Yeshua Noitzi here is not the same Yeshua Noitzi that was later. Okay, so what's the story with Elisha? Elisha Maihi. When did Elisha reject and push away his student Gehazi that he ended up leaving? The pasuk says. Okay, so the Gemara here doesn't bring the whole story, but there was a Goyish general. His name was Naaman. They got very sick. He was a Mitzayra, and he came to Elisha to heal him. And Elisha healed him. And then he asks Elisha, do you want me to pay you for this that you healed me? Elisha says, I don't want anything from you. What happened? So when this Naaman, his name was, when this Naaman left from Elisha, so his servant, Gehazi, ran after him and said that give me this, give me that. So Naaman says, for whom am I giving this? So he says, my master, Elisha, changed his mind. He said he does want pay, he does want reward for healing you. All right, so he basically deceived this Naaman, speaking in the name of Elisha, saying, give me all these things. So Vayomer Naaman, so this general, this guy, Naaman, says to Gehazi, Elisha's servant, Hoyel, swear to me that your teacher sent you, that Elisha sent you, and kach, and take for yourself kikarim, loaves of bread, or kikarim maybe means, how do they translate it over there? Kikarim means, again, kikarim, he says, in the Ksiv, another pasuk it says, Vayomer Elav. Okay, so now, later on, what happened? Gehazi came back. You have the translation of me?
And did not my spirit accompany you when the man...
Okay, that's later on. Okay. Vayomer Elav. So now Elisha says to...
take 2 talents of silver.
Silver. Okay. You told him take silver, right? Okay, Vayomer Elav. So now Elisha says to Gehazi, what happened over here? What did you get from him? Loi libi holach. Do you think that my heart does not realize what you did not go with you and realize what you did? When this man, this Naaman, turned to you from his wagon, is this the time for you not to go and take the silver? And you went and you took from him begodim, clothing, v'zeisim, olives, kromim, vineyards, tzayin, sheep, ubakar, and cattle, v'avodim, ushvachais, and servants and maids. All these things that you took from this Naaman and you asked him to give you. So in other words, Elisha was very upset at him. What did you do? You went and told him in my name that he should give you all these things. That's the story that happened over there. But now the Gemara asks on the details that it says here. You look before, what does it say? Gehazi told Naaman, give me kikarim, which was silver. Give me silver. But then when Elisha was screaming at Gehazi, he's telling him, you took all these things, but we don't find that he took all these things. Frak the Gemara, umi shakal kula hai. Did he take all these things from him? Kesef or begadim or the shakel. If you look in the pasuk before, it says he took from him was silver and clothing. He didn't take all these things that the pasuk says over here. So now, if you count the number of things that it says that Elisha was screaming at Gehazi that he took from him, it counts over here 8 different things. Why? So what's the significance of him saying to him that you took all these 8 things? Rabbi Yitzchak explains, in that time, Elisha was teaching his students, including Gehazi, the Gemara, the Sugya that discusses the ideas of Shmeina Shratzim. There are 8 different Shratzim that cause Tumah. He was teaching him that halacha. So Amalai, what he was hinting to Gehazi is Rasha, wicked one. Higia Ace Lipol Scha Shmeina Shratzim. The time has arrived for you to get the reward of your learning Torah, this sugya of Shmeina Shratzim here in this world. So the 8 things is a reward corresponding to the Gemara or the idea that you're learning then about Shmeina Shratzim. A Rasha gets this reward in this world, and after he gets his reward in this world, then he's punished in Gehenna. So that's what he was telling Gehazi, you're going to get your reward for learning here in this world, and then you're going to be punished. Now it says over there, what was the punishment that happened to Gehazi? Tzaras Naaman. That tzaras that Naaman originally had, will now be connected to you and your children forever. And then the pasuk there later says, Varba Nashim Hoyim Mitzrayim. There were 4 men that became Mitzrayim. Amar Rav Yechanan. Who were these 4 men? Ze Gehazi u'shloishes banav. This is the curse of Elisha that happened to Gehazi and his 3 children. Now later on, so this is the story where Elisha rejected and pushed away Gehazi with his 2 hands because of what he did. But later on, the pasuk does say, Vayelech Elisha to Mesek. Elisha went to Damascus. Loma halach. Why did he go? He did go now to find Gechazi and to bring him back to do tshuva, to be mekarev him. But v'loy chazar, he did not do tshuva. Amalei Elisha said to him, Chazar bach, do tshuva. Amalei, so Gechazi said, Kach mekublanim imcha. This is what I learned from you. Kol mi shechata v'hechti yisarabe. One that sinned and he caused others to sin. Ein masvik miyadi las tshuva. So then he does not get the opportunity to do tshuva. So I can't do tshuva anymore. So the Gemara says, what did he do? That he caused others to sin. Ma yavad. Ikedamri, there are those that say, Even sheyeves. He took this even, this stone that draws, this sounds like a magnet. That's what it seemingly is here. He took this magnet and talaloi, and he positioned this magnet in a place that he was able to draw up l'chatas Yeravam, to this carbon that Yeravam was bringing for Avodah Zarah. And it lifted up this carbon, and it was sort of hanging in midair. So he was creating this illusion that people should think that this is some kind of god, Avodah Zarah. And it was there hanging between heaven and earth. So he created this illusion for people to serve Avodah Zarah. So he caused the Hechti Sarabim.
Supernatural power.
Vekedamri, and the others that say that what he did was Shem Chakakloi Apuma, that there was a Shem that he engraved on its mouth, and what happened is supernaturally with this kayach of kishim. So this carbon, this animal, was saying that I am that it's an Avodah Zarah and la'yilacha. So he caused others to come and serve Avodah Zarah. Another opinion that say what did Gechazi do? Rabbanon dacha mikameh. This is something he actually had done already earlier on, before he left Elisha, that he would push away. He was a servant there by Elisha, but he wouldn't allow all the different students that wanted to come and learn from Elisha to come and learn from him. Where do we see this? The pasuk says, that people after Gechazi left. Now, people by Elisha said the place to sit over here by you is very, very tsar, very squeezed over here. What does this mean? Miklal, from this we understand. But until that point, when Gechazi left, there was a lot of room because Gechazi didn't let the students come and learn by Elisha. This is the story with Elisha and Gechazi. Now, the next thing that the Gemara, that Braisa before brought, Yeshua ben Prachye Maihi. What is the story with Yeshua ben Prachye? That he pushed away his student. So the story is as follows: Could have a kokotl Yanai Malkel Rabbanan. There was a time when Yanai, he was a king, so he got upset at all the Rabbanan, all the Tanaim, the Talmidei Chachamim in his times. So he began killing the Rabbanan. So what happened? Shimon ben Sotah, Atminu Achse. Shimon ben Sotah, his sister, went and hit him. How? Because his sister was Yanai HaMelech's wife. So therefore she knew what was going on. So she went and hit her brother. Rabbi Shua ben Prachye saw what was happening. Ozal Arak like Alexandria Shal Mitzrayim. So he ran away to Alexandria in Mitzrayim. Now after this all passed, Ki Ava Shloma, when it was already peace again, so Yanai stopped killing the Chachamim. Shalach le Shimon ben Sotah. Shimon ben Sotah sent a message. He sent a letter to Yeshua ben Prachye, which was hiding in Mitzrayim. Mini Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh, from me here in Yerushalayim, the holy city, L'cha Alexandria Shal Mitzrayim, and I'm sending to you the message to Alexandria and Mitzrayim. Achaisi, my sister, Baili, my master, Shari b'Seichech, is dwelling in it. V'ani Yeshev es Shemema, and I'm sitting over here desolate. He was sending a message to Yeshua ben Prachye that you, the master, because Rashi here brings he was the Nasi in that time, and you're dwelling over there in Alexandria, and here in Mitzrayim, in Yerushalayim, it's desolate. In other words, he was sending him a message to come back. Amar, Yeshua ben Prachye said, Shma mina havalei shlama. So I understand from this that it's peace, I can go back. So he was traveling back. Ki also, on his way back, ikla lahu ushpizet. He traveled back, he came to an inn. Kom kamayu biyukare. They got up for him in honor, and shaper of the liyakare tuve. They treated him with a lot of honor. So Yosef, the Kamishtabech, Kamenoach San Yezu. So Rabbi Shua ben Prachye, he was sitting and he was giving them praise, and he was saying, how amazing is this inn over here, that they're treating me with the proper honor. So one of the students that were together with Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachye, like I said before, and the old version of the Gemara, it said a Yeshua Noitzri, so he gets up and says, Rabbi, my teacher, Einea Trutais, the woman here that's treating you so nicely, look at her, her eyes are round. In other words, he was saying that her eyes are not so beautiful. Amalei, so Rabbi Shua ben Prachia says to his student, Rasha, the kachat ha'isik, this is what you're thinking about, that you're looking at an Eishes Ish and thinking about her for yourself. Apik arba meye shifuri, he took out 400 shayfris, which means that he sent out, he announced, proclaimed, that he should be placed in Cherem, Vishamte, and he placed this student of his into a Cherem. Kol Yoime every day, also Lekameh, his student would come to him to be accepted back. V'lei Kible, he did not accept him. Right, so this is the story where he rejected him with two hands. Yoim Echad, one day, have a kari kriyishma. Rabbi Shua ben Prachi was saying kriyishma. Also Lekameh, so exactly at that time, his student came, he wanted to be accepted again by him. So then Rabbi Shua ben Prachia did have in mind to accept him back. So he made a signal to him with his hands. He meant to show to him that I'm in the middle of saying Kriya Shema and come back. But the student thought that he's trying to show him to leave, to go away. He's pushing him away. So when he saw that, so this was the final time that he left, and Azal, he went, Zakav Leveinte, he placed a brick or some kind of a thing, and a polcha, and he went and served Avodah Zarah. After that, Rabbi Shua ben Prachi went after him, and he wanted to try to bring him to do tshuva. Amalei said to him, Chazor b'cha do tshuva. Amalei, so he answered him, Kach mechumlani mimcha, this is what I learned from you. Kol ha'chayte, umachti esarabim, one that sins and brings many to sin, Ema, speaking b'yodi lasses tshuva. He will not have the opportunity to do tshuva. And the master said about him, that Kishev, he brought people to do Kishev, Vehesis, he convinced other people to serve Avodah Zarah, v'hidiach v'hechti es Yisrael. He brought others to sin to do Avodah Zarah. So therefore, he could not do tshuva. That's at least what he thought. That's what he said. Tanya. Now we learned in the Braisa, going back to the point we said before about Smoil Deicher. Rab Shimon ben Elazar said, Yetzer. When it comes to a person's Yetzer Hara, and Rashi says this is referring to the Yetzer Shel Tashmish, the Yetzer of a person to have cohabitation, and Tinnik, when it comes to a child. The Isha and a woman, a wife, the attitude should be smoil deiche and yemim mekareves. So Rashi explains that on one hand there has to be smoil deiche, but at the same time though, if a person is deiche too much, so then what happens is, first of all, when it comes to the yetzer of tashmish, a person won't have any children, and when it comes to a child, yes, there is an inyan of smoil deiche, but you can't be deichem altogether. He can run away, and Rashi says here a very strong lashon, he can run away and commit suicide. And an Isha as well, so Daita Kala, and sometimes she has to be explained and disciplined, but at the same time, she can leave and she can go out and behave inappropriately. So a person has to also have Yemin Mekarevis. Zok Teilige Mishneh, going back to the halachis of Egla Rufa. Nimtza HaHoirik. After the Egla Rufa, everything was done with it. But, or actually, sorry, here the Mishnah begins actually with the halacha of Egla Rufa, that what happened was they found the murderer at Shaloi Nerfa HaGola. Before the Egla, before this calf, before they did what was done, that they cut off the head. So then what happens? Teitze v'tira be'eder. So this Egla, this calf that was brought for this purpose, can go back, and it could just be used regularly like anything else. Now the chiddush over here, as Rashi points out, even though it was already brought, it was brought down over there to that place where it's going to be done. Nevertheless, if they find the murderer, it does not have to be done. Rashi brings there's another opinion in the Gemara in Krisis that says the very fact that it was brought down to this place, it already becomes designated for this Egla Rufa, and it becomes like a carbon, and becomes Asa Ba'ana, and it cannot go back with the rest of the animals. Now, Mishanerfa Agala, once they cut off its head and it was done, and then they found the Reitzeyach to cover Bivakaima. It has to be buried in its place, you can't have any benefit of it. Shal Safik Basa Mitchilasa, the whole Egla Rufa is coming because of our doubt. We didn't know who the Reitzeyach is. And therefore, Kipras Sveika, it was used and it was done what it had to do in this situation of doubt, that it brought in a certain atonement, and Vahal Chala. And that's it, it's done, and therefore now you can't have a nar from it, even if you find it Reitzeyach at this point. Nerfa HaGola. Okay, after you cut off the head and then you find the murderer. Okay, so the previous case in the Gemara, when it says Mishanerfa Gola to cover, it was speaking about when you did not find the murderer. So it's saying that you can't have an off from it. Here, the Mishnah says when you find a person, you find out who the murderer was. So you may think that what happens now, that he cannot, that he does not have to be killed because you already had the kapara of the Egla Rufa. Says the Mishnah, no, Reza Yaharek, he does get killed. Okay, so over here the Mishnah is saying that if you find a murderer, so it's still, you're not allowed to have a no from this Egla Rufa, and if you find a murderer, he gets whatever punishment he deserves. Says the Mishnah, another halacha here. The whole halacha of Egla Rufa is because we don't know who the murderer is. But now what happens if you have one aid that says, Re'isi Esahiri, I saw who the murderer is. I saw the Gemara will bring soon that when it comes to this halacha of Egla Rufa, and we don't know who the murderer is, as long as you have one aid that tells us who he is, so even though usually we have to have two aidim, but one aid is enough that we accept his words, that we do not do the inyan of Egla Rufa. So if you have one aid that says, I saw who the Hayrig is, but another aid comes and says, no, you did not see. So now we have a contradiction, one against one. Or Ishay Meres Reisi, one woman comes and says, I saw who the murderer is, Ishay Meres Isa, and another woman comes and says, you did not see. They would do the mitzvah of Egla Rufa because they sort of cancel each other out, so it's still a doubt. Again? No, not Eid Zaymim. One says you saw, and the other one says you did not see. They're contradicting each other. Eid Zaymim is a different concept. They're contradicting each other.
He didn't see. How do you know he didn't see?
He knows. He's saying Eidus. One Eid says that I did see, but then Shnayim Oimrim Lo Yisa. Another two are contradicting and saying that you did not see. So that's two against one. So then, in such a case, you would do the mitzvah of Egla Rufa because two are saying that you did not see, so we don't know who the murderer is. If it's the opposite, two say that we did see who the murderer is, and only one is saying you did not see, so then there's no mitzvah of Egla Rufa because two saw, so we know already who the murderer is. Okay, now the Mishnah here says that this mitzvah of Egla Rufa at a certain point, it was discontinued. Misharabu Haretz Chanim, when there were many murderers, Batla Egla Rufa. The whole inyan of Egla Rufa was battle. Hamishaba Eliezer ben Dinoi. There was this individual by the name of Eliezer ben Dinoi. He was a murderer. Utchina ben Perisha Yanikra, and he gave himself a nickname Tchina ben Perisha, so he should not be noticed who he is. He went by a different name, so people shouldn't know who he is. And Chazru Lekreise ben Aratzchen. Eventually, they gave him this name of ben Aratzchen, of a murderer. So in his time period, he was a murderer, and there were others as well. So therefore, the whole unit of Egla Rufa was discontinued. Misharabu Amenafim. When it came a time period, there were many that were behaving inappropriately in the relations that was not allowed. So the waters of the Sotah that was used to determine what happened was not used anymore. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stopped the use of the waters of the Sotah. Shanema, the pasuk says, "Le'efkoid al bnei seichem." That is, I will not pay attention to your daughters. In other words, to use the waters of the Sotah, kisis nena, because they are behaving inappropriately. V'akali seichem, your daughter-in-laws kisena fena, kihem v'gayim, because everyone's behaving inappropriately. The Gemara will explain. So therefore, the waters of the Sotah doesn't work anymore. Now, some say that the pshat is that the waters actually stopped working. The waters had an effect, b'derech nes, that the woman died, or it determined if she did an Aveda or not. The water stopped working. Or in the Lashon of the Mishnah, it's actually Mashma Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stopped its use because he said that he didn't want it to be used anymore after this. Again? This is that at the end of the second Beis HaMikdash. Yeah. Sagt the Gemara weiter. Yeah. Mishameis Yosi ben Yezer, when Yosi ben Yosi ben Yezer ish Tzreida. Yosi ben Yezer ish Tzreida passed away, or Yosi ben Yehuda, or the other version, the Bachya says Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. He was from Yerushalayim. When they both passed away, Batlu ha'ashkailis. So the ashkailis were batlu. Ashkailis literally means clusters, and we'll see the Gemara says this means people that have everything in them. They knew all the Torah. Shanema, the pasuk says, "Ein eshkai lecha bechura ifsa nafshi." There's no more clusters which I desire for my soul to eat. Okay, so in other words, from that time period began all the machlekes in Yidden. What else I'm going to say? That until their time period there was no machlekes, and everybody learned, and there was the tradition. It was clear, everything was accepted. And their time period was the first machlekes. And Rashi says here, the first machlekes was in the Gemara Chagige, a machlekes regarding doing smicha on a carbon and yantiv. That was the first machlekes. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Yochanan Kohen Gadol in his times, Hever Hoidoyas Hamaiser. He stopped the confession that there is on Maestris, that you have to do once in 3 years to confess that you gave all the Maestris, he stopped that. And the Gemara will explain why. And Hafu Bittel is HaMa'edin. He also stopped Ma'edin, which was something that the Leviim used to say in the Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara will explain. And also V'Noikfin. He also stopped Noikfin, which is something they used to do to the animals by the Karbanis. They used to strike the animal, the Gemara will explain. And another thing, in the times of Yechanan Kohen Gadol, Ad Yamav, until his days, Hayapatish Makeh B'Yerushalayim. Even on Cholamayid, Rashi says, what's the halach of Cholamayid? You're not allowed to work in Cholamayid unless the work you're doing is a davar ha'avid. It's something which you're going to have a loss of money. So therefore in Yerushalayim, so they had these silversmiths that would do their work in Yerushalayim, and there was a big commotion and noise of work done in Cholamayid until his time period. But B'Yamav, in his life, again, that's a separate thing, but he stopped this. He stopped any work on Cholamayid in Yerushalayim in his time. Another thing, Ubiyamav, in his times, Ein Tzarech Lishoil Ala Demai. When you're buying produce, and this is Demai, Demai is if it's unclear if the Meisters were taken from it or not. In his time period, you didn't have to ask about Demai because he instituted that any time you buy from an Amaretz, you have to give Meister again. So you don't have to ask because you just have to give the Meister again. Sagt die Gemara Tanra Banan, we learned in the Braise, Minayin, Shem Nerfa, how do you know if the Egla Rufa was all done already? And then you find a murderer. It doesn't absolve him from his punishment. And on the ground over here, it does not atone for the blood. The blood that was spilled by the person. He has to take responsibility for what he did, for the blood that he spilled, and he still gets his punishment. Sagt the Gemara, 1:8 says, I saw the murderer, and the other one contradicts him. So then, because there's a contradiction, so we still don't know. So the mitzvah of Egla Rufa still applies. Says the Gemara, time of the Makrishle. The reason why it still applies is because there's someone contradicting him. But if there's no one contradicting him, so then even one witness would be believed to identify who the Ritzeach is, and we don't do the Egla Rufa. From where do we know that 1:8 is believed? The pasuk says, we don't know who the murderer is. But if we know mihiko, even if there's one person in the end of the world, so it's mashma from the Gemara, if someone knows, and even if that person doesn't come, but if there's someone that knows who it is, then the Egla Rufa, they would not do the Egla Rufa. How do you know? How do you know someone in the end of the world? Right. Okay, but let's say the Gemara says that with one person, loy noida means nobody knows. If there's one person that knows, then you don't do the Egla Rufa. Rabbi Kiva says, how do we know if the Sanhedrin themselves, they saw somebody that killed someone, but they don't know who this person is, they don't recognize him. But they know, they had seen it though. So the mitzvah of Egla Rufa does not apply then. So the pasuk says, what do they say when they do the Egla Rufa? We did not see. But over here, they did see. Okay, so therefore we see that whether one knows or whether Bezdin saw, so then the mitzvah of Egla Rufa does not apply. And now here we have a Gemara that's basically a chazara, word for word, of a Gemara that we learned before regarding a Sotah. Rashi over here says that he explained all of it already before, so he doesn't explain it over here again. We had this before on Daf Lamed Aleph. So if you want to understand this Gemara clearly, I explained it before. I'm going to go through it b'kitzur over here. So what are we saying now? One witness is believed. So if so, the second one that comes to contradict him, how could the second aid contradict the first? Ula says the following rule: anytime one witness is believed, he now is the strongest two. And if so, the second one that comes to contradict him is like 1 against 2. So Ula answers you, you're right, you have to change the version of the Mishnah. You're going to have to read in the Mishnah that you can't do Egla Rufa. The first one is like 2, and it's like 2 saying that he knows who the murderer is. Rabbi Yitzchak also said that you have to change the version of the Mishnah that you don't do Egla Rufa in this case. But for Rabbi Chia says, no, you leave the Mishnah as is, 1 against 1, we don't know, and you still do Egla Rufa. How do we answer according to Rabbi Chia the question we just asked from Ula that the first one is believed like 2, so we know who the murderer is? Answers the Gemara, loy kasher. There's no contradiction. Kan, in our Mishnah, we're speaking about bevas achas. When these two, one against one, they came together. They came toich kedei dibur. In such a case, one cancels out the other. And kan bezeh chazeh. All it was speaking about when one came first, and then the other one came later on. So then the second one is not believed against the first, which counts as two. Okay, so we have two versions here in the Mishnah. When it's one against one, do we read in the Mishnah that we do the Agla Rufa, or do we read in the Mishnah that you don't? On this, the Gemara asks from the continuation of the Mishnah. Tana, the Mishnah says afterwards, 1-8 says, I did see the Hayreg. And then 2 say that you did not see. So so that's 2 against 1, and you do the Agla Rufa because 2 is stronger. Now, but what do we understand from this Mishnah? It's only if it's 2 against 1. But if it's 1 against 1, I can understand from this that you would not do the Agla Rufa. If so, this refutes what Rav Chia says. Rav Chia says the version in the Mishnah should be that you do Agla Rufa when it's 1 against 1. Says the Gemara, you're asking a question from what it says in this case of the Mishnah, but what's the next case? Well, according to your reasoning, that you're being medayik from the Mishnah, what does it say in the next case? 2 say we saw the murderer, and 1 says you did not see. So then you don't do Agla Rufa because 2 said that they saw. But over here you can be medayik the opposite. If it was 1 against 1, so then you do the Agla Rufa. So the diuk of the Mishnah is a contradiction. When it's 1 against 1, do you do the mitzvah of Agla Rufa or not? So the basis of this whole Gemara is that the Gemara understands that these 2 cases in the Mishnah are really extra because it's obvious that 2 is believed against 1. Why is the Mishnah saying B'chlal 2 times this halacha that 2 is believed against 1? The only reason it would be saying it is for this diuk. But when you look at the diuk, there's a contradiction over here. When it's 1 against 1, do you believe that second one or do you not? Says the Gemara, there's actually no diuk here because the Mishnah is saying this for a different chiddush. The entire Mishnah here is coming to teach me a chiddush in a situation where you have people saying the eidos, but they're pasal eidos. Okay, the Rab Nechemia, as Rab Nechemia said, whenever the Torah believes one witness, the rule is we don't have to have kosher eidos anymore. You follow the majority of the opinion. And even if you have 2 women, which are apostle for Eidos, so these 2 women are believed against 1 man, like 2 men against 1 man. And that is the chiddush of our Mishnah. The chiddush over here is 2 against 1, even if it's 2 apostle Eidos against 1 man. There's another version of this halacha that Rab Nechemia said, and it's as follows. If the first one that came was a kosher aid, then so then 100 women that are contradicting this 1 man because they are pasala eidos, so these 100 are like all 1 against this 1 person. But the halacha of our Mishnah, what's the chiddush in our Mishnah here? That it's a woman that's a pasala aid that came first. And and you should explain the words of Rab Nechemia as follows. Rab Nechemia says, anytime the Torah believes 1 aid, you have to follow the majority opinion. 2 women that are contradicting 1 woman, it's like 2 men against 1 man. But if it's 2 women against 1 man, then kipalge or palge domi. So then it'll be like half and half, and it'll only be like half and half if they came bevas achas. But if they did not come bevas achas, so then that 1 man is believed like 2. Okay, so that's the pshat in our Mishnah. Basically, the Gemara here is explaining that our Mishnah is speaking about a situation of psule eidos. That's the chiddush here. Fragt the Gemara, now v'tarti psule eidos lamali. Why does the Mishnah have to teach me this halacha regarding psule eidos that we follow majority opinion twice? It teaches it to me once when 2 are saying that they do know the murderer, and when 2 are saying that you don't know the murderer. Answers the Gemara, it has to say it twice. Because I would think this halacha that you follow majority opinion by pasal eidos. When is this true? L'chumre, only to be more stringent. When there are 2 people say that we don't recognize the murderer, that is, and then you're going to have to do the Agla Rufa. So that's a stringency. But if it's a leniency that 2 are saying we recognize the murderer and you don't do the Agla Rufa, maybe I should not follow the majority opinion. Kamash Malan, that even then you follow the majority opinion. Okay, as I said, this is the Chazara from the Gemara before. Okay, now the Gemara says, it said in the Mishnah, Misharabu HaReitzchin, when there were so many murderers, so then they stopped doing the Egla Rufa. Tana Rabbana, we learned in Abrai, said two versions about this. One is Misharabu HaReitzchanin, when there were many murderers, Batla Egla Rufa, the Egla Rufa was battled, if you she'einu ba ela ala suffik, because it only comes on a suffik. But in such a case, when there are so many murderers, and everybody is aware who the murderers are, even if you don't know specifically who it was regarding this person that died here, but still, you can't do Egla Rufa anymore. Another Braisa says, a different version, Misharabu HaReitzchanin Begalui, when the Reitzchanin that murdered, and it was open, it was clear to everyone who this Reitzach is, then Batla Egla Rufa. Then Egla Rufa was bottled. Then the Mishnah said, Misharabu an noyafin. So then it was bottled, the mitzvah of Sotah, the waters of the Sotah. Tana Rabbanan and Abraisa we learned, the pasuk says, V'nika ha'ishmi avain. If the man is clean from an aveda, so then the waters of the Sotah work. What does this mean? Bisman she'ish menuka mi avain. If the man himself is clean, then amayim bait k'nesishtay. The waters will do its job to inspect his wife. Ein ish menuka mi avain. But if the man is not clean, if he had a relation with someone else, or he had a relation with his wife, in a time when it wasn't allowed, after she became a Sotah, the water doesn't do its job. And the Oimer, another proof for this is, the Mishnah brought this pasuk, I will not pay attention to your daughters for the waters of the Sotah to work, because they do Averis. So the Gemara says, why are we bringing another source of this if we already see it from the pasuk V'nika ish? Because if you'll argue and say, Avain didei in, maybe only if the husband is sinning, then the waters of the Sotah does not work for his wife. The bone or the bnate light, but if her sons or her daughters are sinning, but her husband is pure, so then maybe the waters of the Sotah will work. Tashama, that's why it brings another pasuk like Efkred al bnei seichem kisisnena val kalisechem kisanafena, that I will not pay attention to you because your daughters and daughter-in-laws are sinning. That's enough of a reason that the waters of the Sotah will not work. Now, you may still say oven eshesish in oven the pnuyalai, that the waters of the Sotah only don't work when there's an aveda of someone having a relation with an eshes ish, but not if it's a relation with a girl that's single. Tashama, the pasuk there continues and says, Ki aim am hazainis yipardu ve'im akdeshes yizabechu, that they go and have relations with zainis and kadeshes, which is also zainis, even if they're pnuyas, even if they're single, and the waters of the Sotah does not work. Now the Gemara brings a continuation of the pasuk. Mai va'am lo yovin yilabit. The nation does not understand; they stumble. What does this mean? Amar Rabbi Lazar says, "Amalam novi li Yisrael." The prophet is telling the Yidden, if you're careful with yourself, so then the water will work for your wives. But if not, so then the water will not help, will not do its job to bring out the truth regarding this wife. Talk to Gemara weiter, a bunch of different things that happened in those times in the negative sense. When people that were Bali Ano, they looked to derive benefit and pleasure for themselves. When there was people that are just living with their own pleasures, Nisafsu Hadinim, so judgment was not anymore honest, and all the people's actions became also ruined and destroyed, because all the Bali Dinim are just looking to have Ano from themselves, and therefore they don't paskin honestly. So therefore people are not behaving anymore. And there's no nachas ruach for the Eibush to hear in his world. Misharabu roye panim. When roye panim was added, bedin, that means that you have a judge that looks at one and gives him more attention than the other. He shows favoritism. So batal leisaguru. So then what it says in the pasuk, not to be afraid of what one baldin or another says was batal. They weren't following this anymore. And upasak leisakiru, and also leisakiru, not to give favoritism, was also batal. Uparka el shemayim, they threw off the yoke of heaven. V'nosnu aleim oil basav adam. And instead, these judges placed upon themselves the oil of a basav adam. They're just worried about what the balidinim are going to think about them. Misherabu leichshe lechishais, when leichshe lechishais, the whisperers. These are oichei adayanim, Rashi says. These are sort of lawyers that would whisper into the ears of the judges about one baldin or another to find favor in their eyes. So then, there was a lot of anger that came upon the Yidden, and the Shechina was removed from the Yidden. Mishum Shanam, the pasuk says, "Bekerev elikim yishpait." That Rashi brings at the beginning of the pasuk. It says, "Nitzav badas keil and bekerev elikim yishpait." The Eibush is with Yidden if you judge like the Eibush wants. Misharabu achrei bitsam libam heilich. When it came a time when the judges were following bitsam, they were following just money. That's what their heart was looking for their own benefit. So then what happened? Rabu ha'imrim, it became many those that say, l'ra toiv l'toiv ra, that what's bad is good and what's good is bad. And when people confused what's good is bad and what's bad is good, in other words, Rashi says that we're praising Rishayim, so Rabu Hoi Hoi. It added those that were saying Hoi Hoi, which is more additional negative things. Bailam in the world. When there were many that were Moishchei Araik, they spit. This is showing a sign of Gaive. Rabu Hayihidim, so there were many haughty people in the world, and Venismatu Talmidim, and the Talmidim were not able to learn Torah anymore. Gasta Saruach, Rashi says, brings poverty in Torah. The Torah is searching and looking for its teeth, for the ones to learn it. When all those Bali Gaiva were many in the world, so then the girls were getting married to these Bali Gaiva. Because in our generation, people only look lepanim, what they see externally on the face, and they don't look deeper to see who these people are that they're marrying. Is this true that these girls were marrying these Bali Gaiva? But the master has said, a person that's a Bal Gaiva, even in his own home, his wife does not accept him. She sees who he is and she does not want to live with him. Shenev, the pasuk says, Gever Yohir, a person that's a Bal Gaiva, v'lo Yonove. It's not beautiful. What do we teach lo Yonove? Lo Yonove afilu b'nove shaloi. Nove also means his dwelling. His own wife that he lives with does not like him anymore. So how do we say that these girls were marrying these Bali Gaiva if the pasuk says that they did not accept their husband in this way? That's the Gemara Meikare Koftzale. In the beginning, they sort of they get seduced into this. They jump on this husband that looks so beautiful with his gaiva. But l'soif mitzvah alayu. In the end, they become very disgraceful in the eyes of their wife. Misherabu matile milei abalibatim. When it was the time when the judges would place milei, they would give their money to their balabatim to invest for them and to make money for them. So then Rabbi Sheiches, what happens is they began taking bribery, vatoyes, mishpat, and also not giving down proper judgment, not justice. Upaske toive, and the good to stop from amongst Eden. Misherabu mikablani toivascha. When it began the time when they were receiving favors, machzakni toivascha, and they were showing, they were like thanking for the favors that were done for them. Again, was referring to the judges. So then Rabu ish hayasha bein of yaseh. So what happens is everyone's doing what they want. Shvalim hugbu, the ones that were low got raised up. And Vagvayim, the ones that were higher up, Hushpulu got lower down. The Dayanim, they're just receiving favors from everybody, so they got lower down. Umalchusa, Ozlov, and Novlov. And the kingdom of Yidden went and got disgraced. Misharabu Tzarayayim, when those that are Tzarayayim, those that are stingy, don't give tzedakah, and V'terfe Teref, and those that steal. Rabu Mamtzeelev, so it was people closed their heart, V'koivtzi Yadayim, and closed their hands, Mulahalvais, from to lend money. And they transgressed in the midst of the Torah says, be careful of not lending money to people. That is, when it came a time period when the girls were walking around with outstretched necks and with their eyes made beautiful to attract attention to themselves, Rabu Mayim Amarim. So that was a time period that you would really have a lot of use of the waters of the Sotah. Ela Shapasku, but they didn't actually use it because, as we said before, at that time they didn't use the waters of the Sotah anymore. Misharabu Makabli Matpanis, when it was a time when people were receiving many gifts. Nismatu Ayomim Viniskatzra Ashanim, the days and the years of people got shortened. The Chsiv, the pasuk says, V'sayne Matanis, one that hates gifts, Yichya, he lives. Misharabu Zuchuche Halev, when people were Zuchuche Halev, the Rashi says Zuchuche Halev means that they don't listen from their teachers to learn Torah, they just think that they understand everything on their own. Then Rabu Machlokes B'Yisrael. That's when arguments began amongst Eden. Misharabu Talmidei Shammai veHillel Shalei Kol Tzarkan. When the students of Shammai and Hillel that learned by them but did not learn and listen properly, so then Rabu Machlokes B'Yisrael. That's when all the arguments began amongst Eden. And V'nas is Torah Kishtei Torahs. The Torah that Eden are learning became like two different Torahs. Misharabu Mekablei Tzedakah Menayivdei Kechavim. When it became a time where Eden were receiving tzedakah from the Goyim, Hay Yisrael Lamaila. The Haim Lamata, the Yidden are above, and the Goyim are below. Yisrael Lefanim, the Yidden are inside. The Haim Lacher, and they're behind. So Rashi says the Gemara brings this as a euphemism, but it really means the opposite, that Yidden suffered from this. So the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, Mishamei Siyosi ben Yezer. So what happened? So then the Eshkoilis stopped. What is my Eshkoilis? What does this term Eshkoilis mean? Amarav Yudah Mashmul Ish Shahakail Boy, a man that has everything in him. And Rashi says he has all of the Torah, and he doesn't forget anything, and there's no arguments. Okay, we'll leave this for the next thing, then let's jump tomorrow.